of November 2021 at 3 p.m. So I would like to welcome all members and officers to the meeting of the Council, which due to government advice to practice social distancing, this meeting will be held virtually. The meeting has been recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practical following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing the meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda and will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking will switch their cameras on at that point. But I'd ask that, with the exception of myself as Mayor, and all other times, you keep your cameras and microphones switched off. This will help to minimise any background noise and interference and ensure connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, you should use the hands up icon on the screen, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Please lower your hand once you're finished speaking. Please also do not use the chat function, as on Teams you cannot clear any text from the text on the meeting recording. In the event the Council requires a vote on any item of business before it at the meeting, the monitoring officer will call out the name of each member present in turn and request them to vote verbally, either for, against or abstain. Then ask the monitoring officer to announce the result of the vote and the Council decision on the item. Officers from Democratic Services and ICT will be supporting the meeting and be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary, will mute those not being used. Also ask officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. So we'll now go to the agenda, and item 1 on today's agenda, apologies for absence. I received apologies from Councillor Steve Smith, Councillor Jeff Tisley, Councillor Ross Sturman, Councillor David White, Councillor Martin Jones and Councillor Malcolm James, and I'm informed that Councillor Mary Hughes may join the meeting later. Any other apologies from members? Hang on, my screen's gone crazy. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thanks very much. Apologies, I do need to leave the meeting about 4:30, 4:45.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Alex Williams.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Carolyn Webster, Councillor Elaine Venables and Councillor Sorrel Dendy.
Okay. All then being recorded. Any further apologies from members or officers? No. Can't see anybody indicating. Okay. Moving on then to item 2. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members or officers? No. Okay, thank you for that. Right, that's item 2. What I propose now, we have a presentation on item 6. I propose we bring item 6 to the next part of the agenda before we move on, go back to the minutes and the rest of the agenda today. So if I could hand over to, I think, Mark Shepherd, as Chief Executive, to introduce the report, item 6. Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief, just to remind members really that today's presentation by the Police and Crime Commissioner, Alan Michael, and I think by the Chief Constable of South West, Jeremy Vaughan, sorry, a bit of interference, is the latest in a series of presentations that we agreed to bring to full council. So you recall that we recently had one from Valleys to Coast. Today, as I say, is from the PCC Chief Constable, and we also have within the report, you'll note, one planned in December from Cyntaf Megannog Health Board, and then a further one planned in March from the South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority. The plan for today, Chair, just to be clear on timings, is that there should be a relatively brief presentation from the Police and Crime Commissioner, and of course opportunities for questions and answers from members. My understanding is that Mr. Michael does need to leave anyway by 4 o'clock, but that fits in well anyway in terms of the timings that we've set aside. So the idea is, as you know, that these are informative presentations that set out plans and priorities, but also give members the chance to question whatever is raised, and indeed raise issues of significance to them locally. So I think without further ado, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it to you to introduce the guests.
Thank you, Mark. Just to put things in order, can I first have a mover and seconder for the report?
Move, Chair.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you for that. Right, yo, and welcome, Alan, to the meeting of Bridgend County Borough Council today. And for your spot, we've moved you up the agenda, so I appreciate you have to leave a bit earlier. So we'll now hand over to yourself. I'm not sure how you're going to do it. We're looking at perhaps 20 to 25, 30 minutes, and then some time for questions, which hopefully will fit in with your time slot then.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the invitation and for the welcome. This is going to be a double act between myself and the Assistant Chief Constable, Jenny Gilmer. Jeremy Vaughan, the Chief Constable, sends his apologies, but Jenny is the Assistant Chief Constable with responsibility for territorial policing. In other words, all the local policing across the 3 basic command units and the 7 local authorities of South Wales. So she's an ideal person to be sharing this spot with me. I'm just going to introduce for a few minutes, pass to Jenny. We'll go through some slides on which we'll both comment, but Jenny will lead us through that. Basically, we are, like everybody else, facing up to the enormous challenges and the impact of the last 18 months or so, because COVID has been devastating. It's been devastating to the health service, obviously, and to the health of our citizens. It's been devastating for local government. It's been devastating for policing. And we're not out of the woods yet, are we? I think each time we think we're coming close to being back to normal, it turns out that it's not quite normal, and we've got other challenges to deal with. But despite that, there's a very, very clear focus on our priorities within South Wales. And this is very much a joint initiative between me and my team and the Chief Constable and his team, with our priorities and particularly local delivery very much at the heart of it. It's at the heart of my police and crime plan, as members of the council will know. I've written the last time that I refreshed that plan to every single councillor across South Wales with a copy of the plan, and I'll do the same when we do a further refresh again. Local delivery is at the heart of the Chief Constable's delivery plan, and in fact we write the two together in South Wales. I'm not sure that's what happens elsewhere, but it's very much a partnership here. As I say, the NHS is still reeling. Social care is incredibly demanding, and I know that's one of the big issues for local government. But policing too is experiencing massive demand, and we'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. Whereas in the early stages of COVID, there was a dropping off. Crime, if you like, it wasn't as easy for people because they weren't around. Well, demand, which is slightly different to crime, and a larger entity, is back to pre-COVID levels and above, plus the demands of COVID that are still there. Nevertheless, we're planning for delivery on our priorities. That is neighbourhood policing, the role of the police and crime support officer, the PCSOs, and just very quickly on the role of the PCSO, we've been much clearer about that than used to be the case in the past, I think. Number one, it's about engagement with the community, both speaking to and listening to the local community. It's about problem solving, and That's about problem solving jointly, very often with the local authority, with councillors in a local area. And thirdly, it's about enabling, it's about empowering local communities to be able to do their own thing. And obviously, we're able to put some effort into that because of the commitment that was made at the election in May and has already been delivered in terms of the resources being provided of an additional 100 PCSOs across Wales, additional 41 in South Wales. And the third element of that sort of local delivery is our contribution to community safety. Now, the Chief Executive, Mark Shepherd, has been very much involved with the refresh that we've been trying to do on an all-Wales basis, being a member of the Safer Communities Board as one of the local government representatives. And we met recently with the leader and the Chief Executive and the Cabinet member in order to talk about how we refresh community safety. So we're also doing a lot of listening. In the case of Bridgend, there's the local engagement of our officers and PCSOs, the neighbourhood teams, but also I did a walkabout in Bridgend Town Centre the week before last. We did a virtual engagement with people from Bridgend only this week. So there's a lot happening, which probably isn't always visible, but it's got that focus on delivery for the people, in this case of the Bridgend Borough, who you serve and we serve. So with that, I'll stop and ask Jenny to take us through some slides.
And welcome, Jenny, and good to see you, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a colleague who's just about to share her screen so we can have a look at some slides. Myself and the Commissioner today decided to focus on 4 areas. We can't cover everything, which we believe will be of interest, and they are our responsiveness to 999 and 101 calls, always topical, a bit about crime levels in Bridgend and across the force, but that comes with a caveat that we haven't returned to normality yet. Crime levels have fluctuated in a way that it makes it very difficult to make predictions around that. We're going to talk a bit about violence against women and girls, which is an area that's attracting a great deal of focus at the moment. And as the Commissioner mentioned, a bit round about community safety and neighbourhood policing. So if we could just have the first slide. I make no apology for focusing on 999 and 101 calls. It's a key issue for us. Being able to pick up the phone as quickly and efficiently as possible to the people who need our help is incredibly important, and an area of our business where, quite rightly, the Commissioner holds us vigorously to account. We have seen levels of unprecedented demand over the past year or so. So I'll just explain what you're looking at here. The bit down the bottom in the light blue, that's our 999 calls. Above that in orange, it's our 101 calls, but that kind of new bit that you see creeping in just at the start of 2020, that's additional ways that people have been using to contact us. So you've got the dark blue bit is social media, the grey bit is email, and the yellow bit is a new single online home system. Now, please be aware, and you will be aware anyway, behind the numbers lies so much complexity and so much vulnerability. So whilst I will focus on the numbers, I think that can only ever be part of the story. We experienced quite a lot of challenges over the summer. I'm being perfectly honest with you there, and you can probably see back in July this year, we hit a peak of demand that was above anything that we've seen recently. Those challenges have been rectified, though. A large amount of effort went into that. And whilst we're going to receive about 18,000 999 calls in November right across the force, we're getting to 99.5% of them very, very quickly indeed. That did drop a bit over the summer. It did drop a little bit back in July, and no doubt members of the community of Bridgend, some of them did experience that, but I'm pleased to be able to report that we are back in a very strong and healthy position. And then we've got our 101s, so maybe not the emergency situations, maybe not people who are currently being being victimised or in fear of their life or their health and their safety, or have witnessed a crime. But, you know, people who want to report to us something that they've seen, something they're concerned or worried about. And again, big peak back in July. That's dropped back again as well. We're never going to get to all of our 101 calls. And I know it's a very topical area. And the reason for that is we are absolutely always going to prioritise 999. But actually, we're about 85% of 101 calls that we are getting to in a timely manner. There's always going to be those outliers, of course there are. But I'm very pleased with the improvements that have been made in that respect. So what does this mean? It shows that there has been huge demand and no real signs, with those peaks and troughs that are evident on the chart, no real signs of that alleviating. But as I say, things are still settling in the post-COVID world we now find ourselves living in. Getting it right at that first point of contact is critical. That's the point in time where we get the quality and we get the speed right, then the level of service that we offer to people is already in our front foot. And the third part of that is not everything that comes into our control room goes out of the control room. So we're doing a huge amount within the control room to make sure we deal with what we can there, providing additional help and support to officers dealing with mental health calls, dealing with missing persons, incredibly complex and potentially time-consuming issues, providing additional support at that first point of contact to make sure that we make the right decision and the most effective decision as often as possible. And the big upside of that is that it frees up as much of our officer time as possible to be out and about, proactively patrolling and making sure that we're able to get quickly to the people who need us. I'm going to stop at that point and hand back to Commissioner, because I know this is an area of business where he has a very, very rigorous focus and a very, very welcome focus, to be honest with you. Commissioner?
Thanks for that. I've just had a little bit of difficulty because I was thrown out.
Can you hear us okay? Oh, no, he's gone again. Oh boy. Commissioner's been kicked out again.
Oh dear, that's never a good thing. Okay, shall I push on then, just to make best use of time?
Yes, please, if you can, yeah, we'll bring him back in as soon as we can. Bring him back in.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you, Jenny.
Go to the next slide, please. So just a little bit about our crime levels. Now, I don't want to focus too much on this for the reasons that both myself and the Commissioner have already mentioned. Crime fell throughout lockdown. I don't think there's any great surprises there. We didn't have a nighttime economy. Many of our shops were closed in public spaces. We saw reductions in most areas, and that's quite consistent across Bridgend, actually. Unfortunately, what we didn't see were significant reductions in some of our more serious crime, for example, rapes, sexual offences, and the drugs market in particular, drug dealing, proved remarkably adaptable and remarkably resilient for the duration of the pandemic. What we did see were large reductions, quite surprising reductions in the levels of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And that surprised us, because people were, they were locked down together in their houses, out their usual support network. So I don't think there was a reduction in domestic abuse and violence. I think there was a reduction in reporting. And what we are starting to see is numbers creep back up to normal levels and above. Unfortunately, child abuse in a similar category there. We're starting to see those reports coming through. When the nighttime economy opened up again, we began to see crimes like violence, antisocial behaviour, no great surprises there, start to jump quite significantly. So as the Commissioner described, and no exception within Bridgend, what we're seeing is actually a return to almost pre-COVID rates of criminality in some areas and significantly above in others. And that's been it has been a challenge, I'll be honest with you, to cater for that, to make sure that our operating model is effective when we have the right officers in the right place at the right time. But I'm very confident that we are responding in a flexible and responsive manner, and as much as possible working closely with partners to address those issues of shared concern. I see commissioners back. Maybe a good time to hand to you, Commissioner. I've just finished off in 999 101 and a little bit on crime.
Yeah, a microphone.
Let's try there. The computer said that I'd been thrown out by somebody, but I don't believe it. Bridgend would never be so unwelcoming, so my apologies for the technical problem. I think I just wanted to underline the fact that the 999 effort, making sure there's that instant response to people in an emergency, involves a massive amount of effort, and we have in the past invited councillors to come and see how that works, and to really get the feel of it, you have to go on a Friday or Saturday night. It's an incredibly impressive effort that's put in. On 101, we really have struggled in the last couple of years, and I'll be frank, the first signs of a problem there were brought to us by councillors who are hearing of the difficulties from their constituents. And I don't think Jenny would argue with me if I said that for a while operational policing didn't appreciate exactly how big the problem was. I'm glad to say now that the amount of effort that's going into dealing with that problem is enormous. But it's worth mentioning that 101 was never meant to be a police service. It was meant to be a joint service between all services operating at a local level. The pilot, indeed, was in Cardiff, was a very successful one. And my name is one of 3 commissioners on a letter that went along with chief constables to the UK government, pointing out that the burden of 101 is on the shoulders of the police. Police are very often the last service standing. And I understand entirely that people see 101, other than in an emergency when 999 is the right response, as the place to go. Keeping up with those expectations is enormously challenging and very resource intensive. As I say, there's a lot of effort going into it, but I think if you look at those trends on the graph, you'll see how other opportunities are being opened up. The opportunity for people to report online, which young people in particular are much more comfortable with through social media and so on, putting in mechanisms so that people know where they are in the queue or can leave a message in order to be phoned back when the emergency arises. And I would say again that when I've looked into individual complaints, very often, as I say, from councillors who are picking it up on behalf of constituents, it's nearly always been because there's been a spike, there's been an accident on the motorway, there's been a big incident or whatever, at which point, very rightly, the response and the available staff are entirely focused on 999 rather than 101. But I understand how frustrating it is for somebody who's trying to get through. If you're on the phone waiting to be answered, it just feels as if nobody's bothering and you assume they're all sitting around with their feet up, not answering the phone to you. It's not like that, I can promise you. And again, I would say councillors might like to come and visit our public service centre, and you see the extent of an incredible and massive operation there. Thank you.
Okay, back to Jenny.
Thanks, Cynthia. I'll just reiterate that invitation to come and join us in the control room. The Commissioner described it as impressive. It can be eye-opening at times as well. So anyone who wants to pay a visit, very welcome to do so. Next one, please. Okay, the one area I really wanted to focus on in this session, because it has been so absolutely topical and I know will be on the minds of many, is how we tackle violence against women and girls. And in my opinion, we're building on incredibly strong foundations and a lot of really solid ongoing effort here in South Wales, and again, an area that the Commissioner, of course, holds us to account on, and quite rightly. So it's always been an area of huge focus here, but the events that took place in London over the summer, the high-profile murders of not only, but in particular, Sarah Everard, drew that into sharp relief and has galvanised policing in a way that that I'm not sure that I've seen previously. Significant. We have set up a gold group here in South Wales. So that's a group of senior leaders who are directing their efforts to tackle this particular issue, and that's chaired by myself at the moment. The work of that group feeds into an all Wales task force, and that in turn feeds into the national work that's been led across England and Wales. There's 3 strands of activity there, and I'm just going to mention these briefly because I think we have a good story to tell in each one of these areas. The first one regarding pursuit of perpetrators, a lot of really innovative work going on in South Wales, and in my opinion, one of the most important strands of activity here is identifying and ensuring that the proper criminal justice outcomes are applied to people who perpetrate violence against women and girls of all kinds. So some of the things we've done here, we've appointed domestic abuse offender managers. We now implement a new system called RFG+, that stands for Recency, Frequency and Gravity, to identify those most at risk of offending. We have a number of perpetrator schemes for domestic abuse and violence, most famously DRIVE. And we are also very, very proud to have been appointed an Operation Soteria force. So we're one of a handful of forces in the country who will be trialling along with colleagues in CPS new ways, new approaches to tackling and prosecuting rape and serious sexual offences. The second area of business for us is safer spaces and making sure that as far as it is within our gift to deliver, the towns and cities of South Wales Police are safe for women and girls, for everyone, but the focus here is on women and girls and feel safe. A number of schemes there. So we recently signed on to the online tool called Street Safe. So that allows people to report to us remotely and even without identifying themselves if they don't wish to do so. Different areas where they don't feel safe, perhaps on their journey home from school, their journey home from work, their journey home from a night out. And from that, we'll be able to build a rich database of information that we'll be able to share when it's a bit more rounded. We're doing a lot of work with partners. And I think the reopening of the nighttime economy, and I know you have some nighttime economy around about Bridgend in particular, presented a fabulous opportunity for us to reset, educate, raise awareness around about licence holders, those who own licensed premises and those who work in licensed premises. And the anecdote round about that in its early days is that we're getting increasing numbers of reports from door staff, from bar staff, from people who are seeing things when they're at work, looking after people who are enjoying themselves and saying, that didn't look right, I'm worried about what I saw there, I think that person might need help. And that to me is a huge indicator of success. We're coming up to the Christmas party season, of course we are, so enhancing our operational activity in that respect to keep people safe and to make sure we're doing it a bit as well to ensure that the nighttime economy in all our towns and cities is safe and inviting, so people want to go there and want to spend their money, and we get our towns and cities back on their feet again. But the other bit round about this that I'm sure many of you will have noticed is the large number of reported instances of spiking that have been in the papers and the media recently. So in case anyone's not aware, spiking is either an individual being injected with some sort of substance with a view to incapacitating them, or having something put in their drink, perhaps the more traditional method that we're familiar with. We've had a lot of reports of it. I think the reassuring bit of it is that the vast majority of those reports, thankfully, have come from the worried well. People who maybe bit of a false alarm, but absolutely with good intent. So fantastic level of awareness out there. And we will work through every one of those reports to make sure that nothing sinister has occurred. And if something sinister has occurred, it will get a full investigative wraparound. And the third point, and a point that's particularly close to my own heart, is that we have got to do everything we can to improve trust and confidence in policing at the moment. I think we're in a period of a crisis in terms of our legitimacy. And that's come on the back of other incidents, both the challenges around about the George Floyd murder and the Black Lives Matter, then violence against women and girls. And I think some of the delays and some of the challenges in the criminal justice system, not so much here in South Wales, but in other parts of the country, I can see the police starting to become the focus and the target of public discontent round about that as well. We have to do, and we will continue to do everything we can here in South Wales to make sure this is not about our reputation, to make sure that the people of South Wales can have every trust and confidence in us to deliver the best possible service to them. I'll be completely honest with you, there's been a few cases where our officers, the behaviour of our officers has fallen short of the standard expected, and I just want to offer every reassurance that we do everything within our power to identify those bad behaviours and eliminate them from the organisation as quickly as possible. I really wanted to focus on this today because I think it should be the most important, or one of the most important issues on our collective minds at this point in time. But I'll stop there because I could go on about this all day and hand back to the Commissioner, who no doubt will have many contributions to make.
Thanks very much indeed. I've tried to get back on the iPad, and I'm told that I've been excluded. So I'm doing a workaround with the laptop. I'm in some ways pleased, but not for the reasons that it's happened, that national priorities have caught up with us in South Wales in recent times. Violence against women and girls was my #1 priority when I first stood for election in 2012, and it's remained so. The fact that the problem hasn't gone away reflects not a lack of effort, but the fact that we're dealing with major built-in intergenerational issues that go very deep in society. And the other thing is that prevention doesn't win headlines. The operational activity that Jenny has referred to, and the accountability, the fact that if somebody does behave in the wrong way, there's no reservation in making sure that individual's feet don't touch the ground straight away, is something that I scrutinise and I can provide reassurance on in South Wales. But of course, prevention doesn't win headlines, and since the murder of Sarah Everard, this has been on the minds of people generally in every part of the country. What I'd just like to say, in addition to the operational activity that Jenny has referred to, my team do a lot of work as well. We've run campaigns like Drink Less, Enjoy More, aimed at the student population, which has won national acclaim as one of the most successful campaigns of its sort. We've trained door staff to look out and to understand vulnerability, and we know that rapes have been prevented as a result of that. People have ended up in court because they were intending to rape rather than after the event, because of the work and the training that's been given. The Help Point in Swansea, the Alcohol Treatment Centre in Cardiff are other examples. Student volunteers, many of them becoming special constables, the work that we do jointly with the hospitality industry, and through COVID, of course, some lessons have been learned through the JETS, the Joint Enforcement Teams. And one of our assurances, which we were discussing with the leader and the chief executive the other week, is how, as we come out of COVID, we don't lose the positives that we learned during that period about joint working, but we move into joint prevention rather than just joint enforcement, although some of that will remain to be important. I'll pass back to Jenny to get on to the last couple of slides then.
Okay, the final slide is coming up. Yeah, I'll start talking. There we go. Right, so community safety and neighbourhood policing. And if we get this right, then we will have a positive impact, an even greater positive impact on all the issues that myself and the Commissioner have discussed today, and many others that we haven't mentioned, in the interest of maintaining good timing. So Commissioner and our Chief Constable recently wrote out to local authorities round about our commitment to reinvigorating neighbourhood policing. And you know, I think there is something about seizing the moment here. Like many other functions, it has been knocked a little bit by the demands of the past 18 months. But this is exciting, and this is a moment in time we have to seize, because a number of different things are coming together simultaneously that I firmly believe will make a perceptible difference to how we deliver neighbourhood policing in our communities. Now, I know the Commissioner will want to talk about this, so I'll just mention a few of them, but invest in new resources in neighbourhood policing with a very, very clear remit. Building on that renewed sense of partnership and togetherness that I think has been established over the duration of the pandemic, I think it's one of the silver linings that's come out of the tragedy of the past 18 months. We're realigning our leadership to better support and protect neighbourhood policing, and we're going to take full advantage, both in relation to our existing PCSOs, but the very, very welcome addition of 41 funded by Welsh Government to make sure that we strengthen and realign that and really put our PCSOs at the centre of neighbourhood policing. Commissioner mentioned it already. We are incredibly and unashamedly keen to explore joint problem-solving initiatives with our partners, with local authorities in particular, because I think together we could deliver communities that are even safer than the communities that already exist in South Wales. But I know Commissioner is going to have a fair bit to say on this, so I shall hand over at that point in time.
Thank you, Jenny. For me, I'll be brief on this one, but like Jenny, this is a personal passion. Community safety partnerships were based on my experience, both as a local councillor and as a youth and community worker before I entered Parliament, and I introduced them in the 1998 Crime and Disorder Act. They became a considerable success, and what is tragic is that that success was undermined by the resources that were stripped out of both local government and the police during the years of austerity from 2010 onwards. It was devastating. I'll just give you an example. It's one statistic that I use. In Cardiff, there was a department of 90 people concerned with community safety in the local authority. That was down when I was elected to one person for a third of her time. You can't have that stripping out of resources and the equivalent in policing with the loss of the analytic capacity, because it's very important that community safety is evidence-based without the service that's provided being undermined. So it's really pleasing that we're working very closely with the WLGA, the Welsh Local Government Association. We jointly established the Safer Communities Board, which I co-chair with a local authority leader, and that is developing the Safer Communities Network so that we can learn from each other in each area across the 22 local authorities, the 4 police forces, and however many BCUs it is across the whole of Wales. By seeing what works, but also by sharing of information, sharing of data, we can restore the capacity of community safety as a way of preventing bad things happening. Preventing crime, yes, but preventing harm is actually the key of it. So many people will, in recent times, have felt that they haven't seen their PCSOs in the way that they did. That's true, because I had to agree to them being diverted into COVID-related activities, although we have made a commitment to the Chief Constables as much as mine for the minimum of obstruction of PCSOs and neighbourhood officers from their local duties as we try to get back to normal. The relationship between PCSOs and local councillors is often very, very good, but it's not consistent everywhere. And one of the encouragements to the PCSOs and the added number that Jenny has referred to is to reconnect as we come out of COVID and make sure that they are linked strongly with the local councillors. It it's very often the local knowledge which is key to identifying the real problems in every locality. And the cue is in the title, community safety. It's not about all Wales. It's not even about all of Bridgend Borough Council. It's about what happens in local communities. We want to prevent the harm happening and to work with and enable local communities to be able to strengthen their own resilience and capacity. And there are no better partners for the councillors than our PCSOs, and no better partners for our PCSOs and neighbourhood teams than the local councillors representing the particular area. I'll stop there. As I said, it's something I could go on because I have a passion about this. I know it works. And I'm really pleased about the commitment that's been made. For instance, appointments are being made of police staff members into each BCU, so that there'll be a pairing with each local authority, because very often the fact that police officers have to move on for promotion reasons, for widening their experience, does lead sometimes to a bit of discontinuity. We're going to put that continuity in place, and it's something I very much welcome. Thank you very much indeed.
Lovely, thank you both for that. And that's, I'm sure there's some members here will have some questions and further thoughts. It's a very enlightening presentation so far. And I gotta say, it's heartening to hear you accept the sort of problems of 101. I mean, that has hit its spot, a low point, and hopefully that is on the up now. Things will improve, and the community engagement is essential. We've got a couple of people now indicating. Councillor Pam Davis first, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. What I need to ask, I think, which a lot of people don't realise, can I ask how much time is being spent picking up people who would normally go in by ambulance into hospital? We've seen the 8 and 10 ambulances outside. I'm sure that it depletes the police service a great deal, and they very often, if people can't get the ambulance service, they ring a 999 call and get the police, especially if it's a person that's collapsed in the street and maybe fighting because they're the worst side of drink, etc. Although it's classed as an overdose of alcohol, the ambulance service still have to take them in when they can. So can I ask how much, because I'm sure that there's an impact with winter coming on and also the winter pressures and COVID. So how much time the police are actually spending when they could be doing other things rather than taking patients in and out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There we are. Can I start off and then go to Jenny on the quantification? Because actually we were discussing this as 4 police and crime commissioners across Wales only this morning. We have escalated this issue between the chief constables and the commissioners to Welsh Government. The problem with it is, of course, the health service has got incredible demand on it, and therefore the ambulance service is backing up outside hospitals that are under enormous pressure. That also has a knock-on effect for the care services, and I know that's a big issue for local government. So it's a massive issue, but I think in fairness to our colleagues in the health service and the ambulance service, there aren't any easy answers to it, but it is one that we have escalated in discussion with local government, because it's not an issue that can just be dealt with at the local level. But something about the amount of pressure, Jenny?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Councillor. And I think the answer is yes, significant pressure on some occasions. You know, I've been there myself. You know, helping someone on this occasion, an elderly gentleman who'd had, you know, perhaps a few too many drinks and had fallen over and bumped his head, and you know, looking at a sort of 6-8 hour estimated time for ambulance to come, and then, you know, officers are put in that position where they have to make a very difficult choice. Do they wait? And that means that's less officers available to perhaps respond to calls, or do they then take the individual to the hospital, perhaps in a vehicle that was never designed for that purpose? So those are the kind of difficult decisions that the men and women on the front line are having to make as a result of this. But I do agree with the the Commissioner, we do and we must continue to work in partnership with the ambulance service in addressing this issue. I am worried about the winter months ahead. Of course I am. There are no easy answers on this. I think our colleagues in WASC get to understand, but as the Commissioner has identified, that they don't have a wealth, a richness of solutions themselves. When I do identify ways that we could potentially reduce that demand in our officers, then we will look to do that and adopt that as much as possible. But yeah, there's no easy answer on this one, Councillor. It's a very difficult issue at this point in time, and I don't mean that to be in any way derogatory towards colleagues in other services. Quite the opposite, in fact. But we're all on the same side on this one.
Okay, thank you for that. A few people have indicated, and we need to try and bring this to close by 4. So, Councillor Ross Thomas, next, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both for the presentation. The Mayor has already touched on 101. Really pleased to see that being mentioned, which would have been the basis of some of my questions this afternoon. Mr. Mayor, I got 2 very quick questions, and obviously in aiding time, I'm happy to receive a written response if there's no time to respond. So first up, I'm reliably informed that more often than not, only one local neighbourhood officer, that's a PC, not a PCSO, covers the north and west of the county borough at any one time. Just one. Operationally, obviously, numbers of PCs in our neighbourhood policing team have dwindled rapidly in recent years. They're the key in supporting PCSOs on the front line. What plans do you have to reverse the downward trend in police constables so that our communities can have better policing? Just very quickly, secondly, in a day and age where we are trying to right the wrongs of the past and commit ourselves to fairness and equality, why is it considered to be a good use of South Wales police resource to attempt to infiltrate community-based anti-racist groups such as Black Lives Matter, reported in the press in the last couple of weeks, whose only goal is simply to ensure racism is rooted out of our institutions and our wider society? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
2 very good questions again. The first one on the number of people available at any one time. I think I'll leave Jenny to answer, but you have to remember that there are 2 elements here. We have to concentrate on having a good team that can respond to things, as well as the individuals who are working in the local area. So an understanding of the different things that the police have to do, of which the neighbourhood element is only one, is important. On the other one, I won't comment on the individual case because I think there's a good deal of scrutiny going on into that particular case, including from the scrutiny elements of my team. But the one thing I would say is that South Wales Police has been ahead of the game in terms of understanding the experiences of people in our minority communities. My deputy, who is the most senior black woman in policing in Wales, leads for us on race equality. The Chief Constable has made a personal commitment in terms of getting an understanding in everybody through all the ranks of what inequalities mean, how damaging it is, and to get a proper understanding in place. And in fact, only last Friday, he and I were both involved, along with other senior people, in a presentation organised by Race Equality Cymru, which was very challenging but very relevant. I would simply say, don't judge South Wales Police, which is probably the force which at the top level has been most engaged in trying to deal with some of these issues, by one incident or about the headlines that are associated with it. In the best regulated families, things go wrong from time to time. Whether they have or not in this particular case, we'll have to wait until we've done the full scrutiny. But I can promise you that the commitment and the amount of effort that's going in to the recruitment of people from our ethnic minority communities, to equalities of all sorts, for dealing with race crime and so on, is absolutely second to none.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, I'll comment on the other one. So the Commissioner already mentioned that balance between response and neighbourhood policing. In my view, when neighbourhood policing is done properly, then we should have, ideally, even if it is a smaller number of people doing it, the ability to link in and leverage all the assets throughout the organisation to solve the problems that neighbourhood often identifies. So I absolutely accept the point round about the challenge on numbers. And we are carrying some vacancies as well just now, which I'm being very honest about. We're finding ourselves in a particular period of challenge and opportunity. So you probably heard, well, of course you've heard about the uplift in the 20,000 extra officers that Boris Johnson committed to policing across England and Wales. We are in the absolute thick of that at the moment in terms of recruitment, which is a good thing. However, in the first and second year of each one of those officers' employment with us, they have a significant level of abstractions, significant level, more than 50% in their first year. And as a result of that, what we're finding is the numbers look quite healthy in terms of how many people we've got, but we don't always have enough people on the ground. And that will be the situation as we work through that uplift. It starts to get better next year, and the real full impact of that will start being felt. And the other point is we are much better now at continually reviewing where our people are and what they're doing to make sure that we've got the best and most appropriate level of service in different parts of the organisation at any one time. So just coming back to, I think my key point on this round about neighbourhood policing, numbers can be reassuring, but neighbourhood policing isn't all about the numbers. It's about what we do with those individuals and the ability to make sure that we understand what's happening in communities and bring proper problem solving techniques to play.
Can I just come in and just say one thing? Jenny referred to those as extra officers. They're additional officers to the ones that we had a couple of years ago. But of course, once the full complement of added officers are in, it will take us back to just below the number of officers there were in 2010. So it's only just, if you like, restoring something that was taken from policing at a time when demand has been growing. I don't know whether, Mr. Mayor, realise that we're tight on time now, whether you'd like to take the other, all the other questioners and the two of us do a roundup in response to all the remaining questions.
Yeah, that would be about, we've got four people have indicated now, and if you can keep the questions short and responses appropriate, and then we can bring this part of the agenda to close by 4 o'clock. So we've got Councillor Jane Gebbie first then, please. So take the 4 questions and then you can do a roundup response. Councillor Jane Gebbie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, thank you very much for your presentation, both, and you've really evidenced the challenge presented to you as a force during COVID. You've already answered one question, Jenny, and that was in relation to recruitment, because I am aware of the challenges, because you've got staff going from your control rooms and PCSOs becoming full police officers, and you can't actually recruit to the PCSOs. My concern would be around the pay freeze currently for the police that has been issued at UK level. Some concerns for recruitment. And also I'd like to challenge the narrative around domestic violence. We keep talking about violence against women. Surely we should not be educating those perpetrators rather than focusing on women. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tim Thomas.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll get to the points because we're pushed for time. On community policing and safety, the biggest frustration for my constituents is parking infringements. What I'm finding is that people are getting away with parking on WL lines, T-bars, yellow boxes and the like, and they're just getting away with it for days on end. And if you get away with it for one day, you've just act carte blanche to do it all the time. When I report this to the PCSOs, who I have an excellent relationship, and I'm looking forward to doing a walk with them on Friday, they basically say it's a council responsibility. But I think the council resources are quite limited in this area. So I just want clarity on what assistance, if any, the police can provide the council in regard to policing parking infringements.
Thank you. Councillor Julie Williams.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do feel that my question may be for another time. I'm very pleased, Mr. Michael, that you think the Bridgend is very welcoming, because I've got a funny feeling that maybe my question will change your mind. I hope you're not offended. But I would have liked to have heard more today about the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner. And anyway, the question is, what is the point of your role? And before you may turn this on me and say, what's the point of 54 councillors? Just in case you do, I'm going to agree with you. So, anyway, I'd like to know what is the point of your role. So maybe that's for another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sean Aspey. Councillor Aspey?
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry. Just a quick question regarding towns on the periphery, and I'm talking about Porthcawl here, and the massive drain on police resources. If somebody is arrested in Porthcawl, a response unit has to come from Bridgend, and that's been going on for quite a number of years now. Question to Michael. In March 2020, you were successful in bringing 4 of the services, a Coast Guard, yourselves, the fire station and the ambulance service under one roof in Llantwit Major. Now that's with a population of 9,500. In Porthcawl, we've got a population of 16,000. We've got a police station that's gradually falling down. The fire station is not much better, and the ambulance is not far behind that. So just saying, in looking forward, in terms of cost effectiveness, doing the same in Porthcawl, I think, is a high priority for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Councillor Charles Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to endorse what Alan said earlier on about the usefulness and the value of the CSOs. I've been County Borough Councillor for a relatively short time, but a community councillor since 1979, which is quite a long time. And I've seen different initiatives and reforms and new programmes and new relaunches for community policing several times over the years. But since CSOs were first invented, I've never been let down by the local CSOs we've had around Kevin-Glass. They're always reliable. They really do go out of their way to get out and about in the community. I am concerned about a certain amount of turnover, and I'm wondering whether it's that there isn't really any career progression within the CSO service. And I think possibly what's happening is that they're going on then to become police officers. And I think obviously the police service might be gaining something there, but the communities are losing something because there are certain skills that are going with those PCSOs when they move on.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure whether how much of those questions can be answered now in a short period, or whether more detailed reply could be different.
If you give us a few minutes grace,
no problem.
I don't turn into a pumpkin or a white mouse dead on 4 o'clock. So I'm happy to for us to make an effort if you can be relaxed. Firstly, thank you for your kind words. The pay freeze is a massive problem for policing because it's very unfair. But the point is that when the government relaxes pay freezes, it would be really nice if it said, yes, you can have an increase in pay for the police and we'll give you the money to pay it. The relaxation in relation to staff and police officers doesn't come with the resources to pay for it. So we have to somehow find an increase within our own resources. That's why we lost police officers in previous years, but we can't do that now because we would lose money massively if we weren't to maintain the total numbers of police, including the uplift that was referred to earlier. The arithmetic just doesn't work. So there's a real problem there. I agree with you. I'd like to see our police officers and our staff paid more. They've experienced an impact of restraint. But then, what do you do with if you haven't got the money to pay more? in relation to domestic violence and abuse. I always use that term because we've tended to talk about domestic abuse to make it clear that it's not just physical violence, but things like coercive control and so on that is part of the problem. But actually, South Wales is ahead of the game, as I think I mentioned last time I came and spoke to the council, because we took on something called the DRIVE programme, which involves challenging and seeking to reform serious violent people, virtually all men, not quite, but mostly. That programme was a successful pilot originally in Merthyr and in Cardiff. When the money had run out in March of last year, March 2020, I was not happy with the idea of us losing what was a successful programme in those two areas. And as a result, the Chief Constable and I sat down, looked at it, recognised that it was actually preventing a lot of harm, particularly to women. It was a successful programme. It was also reducing demand on police officers and having to respond to violent incidents. So instead of what would have been logical at that stage, saying it's a pity we can't continue it because we haven't got the money, we said, actually, what we need to do is to make this service available across all 7 local authority areas. So that during the course of 2020, by September 2020, we extended it to every area, including Bridgend, and then Swansea and Neathcote Talbot in the autumn of that year. So it's now a service that's available in all 7 local authority areas. The problem of domestic violence and abuse hasn't gone away, but we are in the forefront of actually trying to tackle the hardest elements of it. Tim, I'm afraid I'll give the same answer as the PCSO. Parking is a council responsibility. Having said that, obviously police officers have powers they can use when the parking infringement is dangerous. It's on a corner or whatever. And in any event, I think it's one of those things, knowing how much irritation it causes locally, that we need to look at jointly between the police and the council to see if we can, as I say, moving from joint enforcement, although this is an element of enforcement, and see if we can support each other rather than passing the buck. But as I say, the buck is very firmly with the local authority, but let's see what we can do to assist with it. As far as the question of the role of Police and Crime Commissioner, look, I didn't invent this role. I looked around for somebody to stand when this role was brought in by a Conservative government, and when I couldn't see anybody that I felt I could convincingly support, I thought, well, it's put up or shut up, and therefore I resigned from Parliament to stand myself. I have to say it's the most productive role I've ever held, because I can get things done. It's not so much the power or resources. The resources are with the Chief Constable, but it's the power to convene, the power to build partnerships, the power to analyse problems and to talk with others, Welsh Government, local government and so on, in order to try to solve those problems and get on with things. And I wouldn't share your cynicism about councillors. I think councillors play an absolutely incredibly important role. It's one in which councillors very often have very little training and very little support, and I think it's remarkable what a good job is done by councillors and by police and crime commissioners. As far as Porthcawl is concerned, I very much recognise that it's not just the main town, the county town, but all those communities, including Porthcawl, including Maesteg, and so on, that we have to look at. We do need to look in the not too distant future at a replacement of the arrangements in Porthcawl, and it'll never be a like-for-like replacement of a big police station like the crumbling building that you referred to, but the possibilities of doing something in partnership with others is something that we do look at innovatively Jenny in a variety of ways across the force area. Probably haven't got time to say more than that, but you know, if there are ways of partnering with other organisations, I can assure you there'll be a lot of discussion going on in the hope of doing that. And finally, Councillor Smith, I would just correct you on one thing. You said CSOs. That was a temporary usage insisted on by Welsh Government, which actually Carl Sargent agreed that we should do away with. They're all PCSOs, whether they're and there's no distinction between those who are funded by Welsh Government or funded from police funds. That money all goes in together. Every PCSO is the equal of the other. In terms of turnover, I think you have a good point. I have to say there is, and this isn't just in South Wales, across policing, massive resistance to the idea of having a hierarchy within the PCSO culture, although in some ways perhaps the introduction of police staff members having a role in community safety may be a first step in some sort of direction there. But there are PCSOs that I've met in recent weeks who've been in the role for 15 years and more because they love it and they're making a contribution in the local community. I suspect the ones that have stayed are the ones who haven't been messed about and moved about. I know that that's something that Jenny and the current Chief Constable share. We did have a Deputy Chief Constable who believed in moving PCSOs around, and I think that did an enormous amount of damage. He was a very good man, but he got that one wrong. And I think we now have stability and commitment to trying to keep PCSOs in place for as long as possible.
Okay, thank you. Jenny, do you have any more to add?
No, I don't think so. I think the Commissioner captured everything there, and I risk going into a level of detail that's inappropriate right here, right now. So nothing additional from me.
Great, thank you. Well, I think there's been some great. Just to sum up, I think our leader, Councillor David, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just sorry, you're going to sum up. I was just going to offer our thanks on behalf of all members to the Commissioner and the Assistant Chief Constable. It's been a very helpful presentation, and of course, if members have other issues to raise outside of this meeting, I meet on a regular basis with the Divisional Commander for Bridgend, who's very proactive, and also meet with the Commissioner, who's also very interested in operational issues, alongside the Chief Constable or representatives of his Chief Constable on a regular basis. And I wanted to place on record my thanks to Chief Inspector Geraint White, who unfortunately is leaving Bridgend. He's been an outstanding colleague to work with, and I'm not just saying that because he's a former pupil of Comfort Comprehensive. I'm saying it because he was a very good police officer, but he's had a promotion, isn't he? So I wanted that to be added to the minutes, Mr. Mayor, and thanks again to Alan and Jenny for their time today.
Can I just say, Mr. Mayor, thanks to you, though, because Bridgend is a friendly council, despite throwing me out of the room on 3 occasions this afternoon. And, you know, we're at our best when we're working together. My political background is Labour and cooperative, and I underline the cooperative because I think working together, as we've shown through the COVID outbreak, we can do more than we do alone. And I regard Bridgend Council as one of the best in working with us in that spirit. So thank you in particular for inviting us today. It's really good to be able to answer questions, and we always want to respond to concerns from people. So thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, we got through the let me say the word, technology issues, but we're there, and it's great. Long may the partnership continue between local government and the police and community safety partnership. It's definitely working. So thank you. We shall continue with our agenda. I know you have to dash off. You don't want to sit and see the rest of this meeting, but thanks again for your time, both of you, and take care.
Thanks. Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, members. I don't know. I'm getting some feedback. Maybe it's just my laptop. I don't know, but there's definitely some feedback. Councillor Thomas, your camera's on. No, it's not.
Sorry, Chair, lost connection. I'm back on now.
Okay. Right, so we're moving now to item 3 on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from the 20th of October 2021. Have a mover and seconder, please.
Move.
Thank you. Emily, second the minutes.
Second.
I would like to thank my colleague Peter Fox for bringing forward such an important
Second.
proposal, which I feel
Sorry.
welcomed across
I'm
the
al Daf.
divide.
Right, okay, there's sound in the background.
I commend my colleague Peter.
Thank you. Please. Okay, thank you. Right, moving to item 4 on the agenda then. So we receive announcements from myself first. So I'll briefly move through. I'm just trying to get my screen back looking properly. Right. Okay. Right. So the past month has been relatively quiet, but I'm sure that will not be the case leading up to Christmas over the next few weeks, and our appointments are rapidly coming in. Please don't forget that this week though is the last chance to grab a ticket for the charity fundraising evening taking place on Saturday 27th of November at the Heronston Hotel with a buffet, comedy stage hypnotist and music by Lee Dukes and Bridge FM. And all are welcome, all and everybody's welcome. Tomorrow's the last chance to grab tickets. In addition to this, there's a grand Christmas raffle taking place with the first prize of £200 cash and around 20 other prizes with a draw taking place on Wednesday 15th December after the next council meeting. If you like any tickets at £2 each, please just drop me a message and arrangements can be made to secure your tickets. All proceeds from these events will be going to Lads and Dads and Bridgend Carer Centre. Over the past month, I've had the pleasure of being invited to the opening of Bridgend College, his STEAM Academy at their Pencoed campus, which is science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics. And it's amazing to see the facilities being made available to students across these disciplines, and well done to Bridgend College for bringing such an amazing facility to the County Borough of Bridgend. Towards the end of October, I was welcome to open the Lions Club of Bridgend book fair at Westwood Community Centre and came away with a heavy load of books, and so did Roger, the chauffeur. The Lions have raised in excess of £180,000 since first starting this in 1995. It's great to hear about the partnership they have formed with the Volunteer Management Committee of Westwood Community Centre, ably helped by our very own Councillor David White. Following off this, I was invited to the opening of what is, I believe, Bridgend's first mobile veterinary service based in Aberkenfig, MobiVet. This has been set up in what was previously a furniture shop and has been transformed into a modern, well-equipped veterinary surgery with equipment to rival that seen in any modern hospital. It's such a welcome service when they are available 24/7 to call out to your home and surely be of use to people who cannot easily travel to a vet or they prefer their pet to be seen in the comfort of their own home. Last week, I was pleased to be invited to an open-air performance by Brinteg Comprehensive School in Bridgend Town Centre, accompanied by Councillor Disha Patel. They performed their very own short and adapted version of Hansel and Gretel. It was great to see the whole year group, which is year 8 they were, singing along the performance with a great crowd of people watching as well. More of this for the future of the town centre, we hope. And last weekend, I visited Tremaines Wood along with the leader, Councillor Stuart Baldwin, to congratulate Tremaines Woodland Rangers on achieving a Green Flag Award for their work they've been doing over the past few years, protecting and enhancing this ancient woodland, which has trees that are believed to be in excess of 400 years old and sited within the centre of Brackla. This past weekend then, we had Remembrance Sunday. I was honoured and privileged to be at the Bridgend Town Centre Parade and laid a wreath on behalf of the people of the County Borough of Bridgend. The weather was fine, and among the many veterans and service people marching, there was also a small group of people there wearing their orange hats. This was the Lads and Dads representation, who for the first time since we formed just over 2 years ago, decided to lay a poppy wreath at the centre. Poppy wreaths were also laid at services across the County Borough by fellow councillors, and many thanks to all who participated in this day. Lastly, don't forget that nominations are now open for the Mayor Citizenship Awards, and I'm sure over the past year or so there must be many worthy people, individuals and groups out there worthy of an award. So nomination forms can be downloaded and found on the BCBC Mayor's website page. There are now some meeting changes to announce, and the following overview and scrutiny committee meeting dates will be altered to accord with the timing of the Welsh Government budget settlement to local authorities. This has been agreed with the respective committee chairpersons. So we have subject over scrutiny 1, change from 8th of December to 20th of January at 9:30 AM. Scrutiny 2 changes from the 13th of December to 21st of January at 9:30 AM. And scrutiny 3 changes from the 16th of December to the 24th of January at 9:30 AM. The meeting of scrutiny 1 on the 17th of January will need to be cancelled in order to accommodate the above and wider work pressures in the Democratic Services team. So further meetings of the following will also be required to be rescheduled again to deliberate the medium-term financial strategy. So corporate scrutiny will be 19th of January at 9:30 AM. And the next corporate scrutiny then will be the 1st of February at 9:30 AM to receive recommendations on the budget proposals and from scrutiny and BREP. So the rescheduling of the above will necessitate moving the Development and Control Committee from the 20th of January to the 27th of January, and the Governance and Audit Committee dated 27th of January to the 28th of January. The chairpersons of these committees are also in agreement with the rescheduling of these meetings. And lastly, there's also a change of membership proposed on the Governance and Audit Committee, in that the Independent Alliance Group wished to take off Councillor Elaine Venables and replace with Councillor Mike Clark. This does not affect the political balance on this or any other committees. That brings the end of my part, and hopefully all those dates will be confirmed via an email, because there's quite a few dates here changing, and even though I have them in front of me, it's confused me already. But that'll be clarified. Right then, so we move on now then to the next part of the announcements to the Deputy Leader, Councillor Howard Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Plans for a new strategic employment site at Brockcastle have moved a step closer following the completion of major infrastructure works. Welsh Government have invested more than £10 million into the 116-acre site, which has outlined planning consent in place for up to 770,000 square feet of floor space. Key roads and utilities are now in place and can serve up to 9 plots, where modern businesses can be developed to aid economic growth and job creation. An active travel route is also planned for spring, again funded by Welsh Government, and inquiries have already been received from various property developers and owner-occupiers. This is excellent news for the County Borough, and I hope that it will lead to the creation of many new jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Can we have the Cabinet Member Communities, Councillor Stuart Baldwin next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, just two announcements today, but one formal one, and obviously to thank you for your time at Woodlands Rangers the other day as well. Turns out not only the trees are green, but also cabinet members for community, because I turned up in a smart suit and boots and ended up with mud all over the place. But my one announcement for today is on the public consultation is underway on what can prove to be the single biggest highways infrastructure project carried out so far in Bridgend County Borough. Between now and Sunday, the 30th of January next year, we are asking people for their views on ambitious 17 million plans to address long-standing traffic congestion issues in Pencoed. These proposals aim to ease the town's congestion problems, increase safety and deliver new improvements for residents and businesses alike by separating the road from the railway line. If approved, the plans will enable the eventual closure of Pencoed's level railway crossing by rebuilding the Penpris Road Bridge so that it can accommodate two-way traffic and creating safe, all-new active travel bridge over the line for pedestrian and cyclists. This will then unlock potential development land located in the west of the current level crossing and enable fresh investment and facilities to be introduced. We are carrying out a number of drop-in sessions where members of the public can find out more and ask questions, and the consultation survey is available in a range of different formats. Full details of these exciting proposals are available on the Council's website. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on next then to Cabinet Member Social Services and Early Help, Councillor Nicole Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This week marks National Safeguarding Week 2021, and Bridgend County Borough Council is joining with other organisations across Wales as part of a national campaign. Under the theme of safeguarding our communities, a number of virtual sessions are taking place, ranging from training sessions for professionals, youth council debates, public workshops, awareness raising events and more. Each session will discuss a range of issues affecting children, young people and adults, including domestic abuse, mental health, suicide prevention, child sexual abuse and exploitation. Our communities have faced many difficult challenges during COVID-19 pandemic, and we are encouraging residents to take advantage of these virtual events to learn more about the services and support that is available. Full details are available at the Cwmtaf Morgannwg Safeboarding Board website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Next Cabinet Member, Wellbeing and Future Generations, Councillor Denisha Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to briefly mention two things. Firstly, members should be aware that our housing options service is under considerable demand as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In practice, this has resulted in considerably high numbers of applications being made to the service, which in turn has impacted upon the timescales for processing and reaching decisions on applications. To give you an idea of the current demand, the service is currently receiving approximately 350 applications every month. There's also up to 40 additional homelessness applications, which due to often complex nature are resource intensive. While the department is doing all it can to manage the demand, the increase does mean that there is an inevitable knock-on effect, and we are making every effort to support the service and manage expectations in an efficient and realistic manner. And secondly, in more positive news, I'd like to congratulate the Shared Regulatory Service after they won gold, silver and bronze at the 2021 RSPCA Paw Prints Initiative. This initiative is designed to recognise achievements in stray dog services, contingency planning, housing policy, animal activity, licensing and kennel dog welfare. The SRS was recognised in 3 different categories: stray dogs, animal activity licensing and kennelled dogs. You may recall that the service also received gold, silver and bronze awards in the 2019 Paw Prints Initiative. So to do so again, despite the challenges of coronavirus over the last 18 months, is something they should really and rightfully be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, and great news with the Shared Regulatory Services. Wonderful. The next Cabinet Member for Education and Regeneration, Councillor Charles Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. There have been a number of achievements at local schools recently, which I would like to share with members. Pencoed Primary has become the 3rd school in South Wales to receive reference school status from a well-known online technology company. And this accolade, which is awarded to individual schools and colleges, as well as specific regions, recognises the outstanding use of educational technology within the classroom. Meanwhile, Afon Avelin Primary School in North Connelly has become the first primary in the region to win a Cymraeg Campus Gold Award for their commitment to the Welsh language. The head teacher, Mrs. Lynn Williams, was present at our Welsh Education Strategic Plan Forum meeting this morning, and I gave her my best wishes, and hopefully the leader and myself will visit the school to congratulate the staff and pupils personally. The school's success is set to be featured on national television after S4C spent the afternoon filming with staff and pupils for the daily magazine programme Heno. In Maesteg, Plasnewydd Primary School has been removed from special measures after inspectors from Estyn confirmed that the school has made significant improvements since issues were identified in 2018. Following intensive support from Bridgend County Borough and the Central South Consortium, Estyn has confirmed that a broad base is now in place upon which Plasnewydd School can make further improvements. I don't think there's any indiscretion in my saying that I think there'll be some similar news about another of our county schools before very long. Finally, Christchurch primary teacher Melanie Treadwell has taken part in an event organised by the Office for Climate Education, which preceded the COP26 conference. Melanie was one of only three UK-based teachers chosen to make a presentation on leading the way in climate education, and she was the only primary school teacher to do so. So I think that's quite something. As a result, ITV Wales recently visited Christchurch Primary to film some of the good work that's taking place there. I'm sure that members will want to join me in offering all these people our congratulations. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, and congratulations to all. It's great to have some good news, wonderful news. Thanks all cabinet members there. Next, do we have Chief Executive?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one brief announcement from me, if I may. Members may have seen that Bridgend County Borough Council has been selected as one of the 4 areas in Wales where new flexible ways of voting are to be piloted. The others are in Torfaen, Caerphilly and Blaenau Gwent. All of us submitted applications based on early voting of some sort, and our submission has now been approved. These trials have been promoted by Welsh Government and will coincide with the local government elections scheduled for May next year. They're designed to find ways of making it easier and more convenient for people to vote, and will each test out a different way of enabling residents to cast their ballots. Welsh Government has now agreed further details about what we can expect to see, so I thought I'd share with you some brief details of the 2 pilot schemes to run in Bridgend County Borough. The first focuses on Cynvig Comprehensive School, and following last year's lowering of the voting age to 16, a new polling station will be created within the school so that eligible pupils can cast their votes in the days ahead of the main election day on the Thursday. The second scheme will focus on wards where people have previously voted in low numbers, actually the 5 lowest wards in previous elections, and will see 20 existing polling stations opening for early voting in the days again immediately running up to the election. Details are still being finalised, but they're expected to be located in Brackla East and Coedchurch Lower, Brackla East Central, Brackla West Central, Corneli Pyle, Kenvig Hill and Kevin Crubber, St Bride's Minor and Ynysoundra. Concurrently, there will be a promotional campaign led by Welsh Government with the aim of increasing local voting and to increase local engagement and democracy. All of the findings and evidence gathered from the pilot schemes will be analysed by Welsh Government and will ultimately influence how future elections are carried out throughout Wales. We will be fully publicising what this means for eligible voters and how they can take part, and more details will of course be provided as we draw closer to the election. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Great news that. Let's hope we start something new for future democratic engagement. Right, thank you for that. That's item 4 done. So we're next on to item 5 then, to receive announcements by the leader. Over to you, leader.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Modern multi-storey car parking at Hillsborough Place, a luxury waterfront spa hotel, landscaping and pedestrianisation along the Eastern Promenade, improved public transport, the extension of Dock Street and new community spaces are just some of the proposals that feature in our new placemaking consultation. Organised in line with the Placemaking Wales Charter, the consultation is inviting businesses and residents in Porthcawl to give their views on the proposals either online or by visiting drop-in sessions where they will be able to view exhibition boards and speak to regeneration officers. The drop-in sessions will take place at the Grand Pavilion between 9 o'clock and 5 p.m. on Wednesday the 24th of November, 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. on Thursday the 25th of November. Following this, the exhibition boards will be placed on hoardings at Cosy Corner for 3 weeks, and the council's website will feature more details and a short survey to enable people to provide further feedback. We remain very ambitious for for these plans and want them to deliver realistic, sustainable regeneration in Porthcawl. I'm sure members will help to promote this important consultation and will encourage people to take part and have their say. UK government has confirmed which projects have been approved to receive funding from the new Community Renewal Fund in the County Borough. This is the precursor to the Shared Prosperity Fund, which will be launched next year as a replacement for EU structural grant funding. A total of 46 million has been allocated to projects across Wales, and Bridgend County Borough will receive 785,000 of this. 213,000 will go to Enterprise Bridgend, an initiative which helps people who have been furloughed or who may be economically inactive to find new employment. 200,000 has been allocated to the Life You Want, which supports people who want to develop and improve their skills or undertake new training in order to gain new work and improve their lives. Transforming Young Minds for Tomorrow will receive 86,800 to encourage more pupils to consider careers in manufacturing and engineering, while Bridgend, Elevate and Prosper will benefit from 125,000 to support new business startups across the County Borough. Incubator for Ambitious Entrepreneurs programme is aimed at helping female entrepreneurs to develop trusted business networks and will receive 92,700. A further £56,700 has been allocated to connecting teachers with industry, which will enable more local teachers to encourage pupils who want careers in creative, digital, environmental and advanced materials and manufacturing sectors. Bridgend will also benefit from a further bid submitted by Torfaen Council on behalf of the 10 local authorities working together through the Cardiff Capital Region. The Connect, Engage, Listen, Transform project designed to add further value to the Council's existing employability Bridgend programme. These are all very worthwhile projects that will have a positive impact upon the lives of local people, and I welcome the investment from UK government. However, it remains a matter of serious concern that Bridgend County Borough has not been included within the top 100 priority places marked for support through the forthcoming Shared Prosperity Fund. We have been recognised as having some of the poorest communities in Wales, and once again we call upon UK government to reconsider its decision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Leader, for that. So that's item 5. We've already had item 6 presentation. So we now move on to item 7. And I think it's Jonathan Parsons. It was Emily given. Oh, sorry, Janine. Janine, over to you, Janine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Item 7 this afternoon is a report to advise Council on the necessity to revise the Local Development Plan Delivery Agreement and to submit a revised delivery agreement to Welsh Government for approval. Now, this report was taken to Cabinet yesterday and is now with the Council for approval. It's imperative that the LDP continues to progress through its statutory review because our existing LDP, Local Development Plan, runs out this year. So a new replacement LDP will prevent ad hoc development coming forward outside of a development plan system. So it's very important that we progress this development agreement, Mr. Mayor. Now, today at Council, I have a number of officers from the Planning Department with me. I've got John Parsons, who's the Group Manager, Richard Mathams, who's our Strategic Planning and Transport Manager, Gareth Dennin is here, who's a Strategic Policy Team Leader, and Adam Provost, who is a Principal Strategic Planning Officer. Now, they're here to answer questions on this report that you may have afterwards, but first, Mr. Mayor, if I may ask Gareth Dennin to come forward and just take you through the most important points in the report, and then we'd be very happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Gareth. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Janine. Good afternoon, members. The purpose of the report, Janine has already highlighted, is to advise Council of the necessity to revise the delivery agreement and to seek approval of the amendments to the timetable and to the submission of the revised delivery agreement to Welsh Government. Now, Section 3 of the report provides the background to the progress made on the LDP to date. The delivery agreement is effectively a contract entered into by the Council with Welsh Government, which details how the preparation of the LDP will be undertaken. It consists of two key elements which are highlighted at paragraph 3.2, namely the timetable, which sets out how the Council will manage the programme for preparing the LDP, and the community involvement scheme, which sets out who, when and how the Council will consult and engage with, including the general public. This report concerns the need to extend the timetable. The original delivery agreement was approved by Welsh Government in June 2018. Since then, in July 2020, Welsh Government advised all planning authorities in Wales that delivery agreement should be adjusted to account for any necessary changes to the timetable in light of delays caused by the pandemic. And as a result, we revised our delivery agreement, which Council approved in September 2020 and was approved by Welsh Government in October 2020. And it's important to note that in the context of the LDP, we are still having to contend with delays associated with the pandemic. Since that date, Council has prepared the deposit draft LDP, which Cabinet approved for consultation in May 2021, along with the various background papers and evidence-based studies. And public consultation took place for 8 weeks in June and July of this year. Now, progress towards the next key stage of the replacement LDP, which is to submit the deposit plan to Welsh Government and the Planning Inspectorate, is the subject of the necessary changes set out in Section 4, which I'll briefly take you through now. Now, the need to prepare a further revision is as a result of the representations received from our communities and key stakeholders during the consultation. When approving the deposit draft document, Cabinet made a commitment to all of those communities that we would consider, formulate and publish a response to each of the individual representations received. We received over 1,200 representations, and dealing with that volume of correspondence has presented a significant logistical challenge that is still ongoing. Only once that task has been completed can we collate all of the responses and present members with a consultation feedback report. As a point of reference, the number of reps is more than double the number we received at the corresponding stage of the existing LDP. In addition to responding to the individual representations, the LDP evidence base needs to be reviewed and refined as a result of new information coming to light, which are changes to legislation, updated national planning guidance, and the completion of various support and technical information. These strands of work need more time to resolve and address, and they are summarised in the bullet points at 4.3. I'll briefly take you through them. We have Technical Advice Note 15 on development and flood risk, which Welsh Government have published and which comes into effect on the 1st of December. This will require some of the proposed site allocations to be reviewed in light of the updated guidance, and the plan-wide strategic flood consequence assessment will also need to be updated. Our Gypsy and Traveller accommodation assessment, whilst complete by the Council, is still awaiting Welsh Government sign-off and approval. The plan-wide strategic transport assessment has been subject to several delays, but we now have the findings and they need to be fed into the plan to identify appropriate improvements to the highway network and the apportionment of the related costs. And finally, with regards to the former Ford site, officers have recently engaged with consultants working on behalf of Ford's to investigate future site options and to ensure that their work corresponds with the policy coverage in the deposit plan. The proposed extension to the timetable is illustrated in Table 1 of the report and shows that Stage 4, which is the stage we are currently at, needs to be extended to next June to allow for submission of the revised deposit plan to Welsh Government next summer. Prior to submission, amendments to the deposit plan can be made as a result of the issues raised during the public consultation, and the document will report it back to Council to seek approval to submit the plan for independent examination. The final point to reiterate is that members will be aware that the existing LDP expires this year. This will place the Council at risk of challenge from the development industry, so it is therefore imperative that the Planning Authority continues to progress with the review of the LDP. However, of equal importance is the need to ensure that the plan is robust and fit for purpose, with all the necessary evidence in place. As such, the issues raised in this report need to be resolved to reduce the potential for challenge further on in the LDP process, which could set us back years as opposed to months. Just a point to note, a full equality impact assessment was produced to support the deposit plan, and that formed part of the consultation. That's attached as Appendix 2. And if I could take you to the recommendation at Section 9, that is that Council approved the revisions to the timetable and authorised the Group Manager for Planning and Development to submit the revised delivery agreement to Welsh Government, and that Council provides delegated authority to the Group Manager for Planning and Development to make any factual corrections or minor amendments as considered necessary. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Members, you have the report before you and recommendations 9192. Can I have a mover and seconder first before we go to questions, please?
Move. Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in agreement? Take it. Yes,
Aye.
9192.
Aye.
We have Councillor Stuart Baldwin, question, please.
Not a question, Mr. Mayor, but obviously I'm supporting this report, as Gareth has rightly pointed out, and I just want to thank all of the staff within our very small planning team for the extent of work that has happened on this, on the LDP process. It is right and proper that we make sure that we take the right decisions, not necessarily the quick decisions. I want to make sure as an authority that we pay attention and due regard to all of those comments that have been raised through what has been a very successful consultation programme. So I was actually supporting and going to move the report, but thank you, it's already been done. But thank you, Gareth, and thank you to all of the team.
Okay, Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thanks very much. Can I ask about, I previously was on the planning committee and I worked with officers with regards to the contribution that developers give for school places. When we looked at this, we looked at the current figures. They aren't correct. So the new LDP looks at the contributions we get from developers, and it was an increased contribution. There was also a contribution then for specialist schools for children who need who've got special educational needs. So that was an increased costs. How are we going to make sure that developers don't now try and rush in with larger developments before our new LDP? Because obviously then we might be faced with problems like we have in Coity, where the school is too small, but because our new LDP should hopefully resolve any of those issues going forward for any new large estates. That's my question. Thanks.
Jenny, I guess. Not there.
I'm happy to respond to that, Mr. Mayor. The new SPG with regarding education contributions has been adopted and it's in place and applies to all planning applications as they are received. With regards to the development industry and their desire to submit planning applications, we are working closely with them. We are speaking to developers and landowners with regards to the timescale of the LDP and the delivery agreement, and basically we're working with them, and we will encourage them that at present the submission of planning applications needs to accord with the development plan, and that's a dialogue that we will be seeking to maintain with them.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor, just to add to what Gareth has said very diplomatically, I think that if schemes come forward at this stage, they will be against the policies in the existing development plan. So what we have said to our developer companies out there is please don't come forward yet. We are assessing the candidate sites that are going forward in the new LDP, and as and when we're ready, then please, when that a plan is approved, then come forward. At the moment, if they do come forward, we would be refusing permission because it's not within our development plan. And I think they've taken note of that so far. But of course, they are expecting to see strategic sites in the LDP moving forward, and that is one of the, dare I say, one of the largest issues that we have to deal with as a local authority, is to ensure that our local development plan has enough housing allocation numbers in it for the future growth we're expecting in the borough. And we are dictated to by Welsh Government what those figures will look like, and we also have to have a little bit of a buffer as well, just in case some sites fall out. So there's been a tremendous amount of work on that in particular, and so at the moment we're holding the line with developers and telling them they won't get permission currently. Please wait for the new LDP.
Okay, thank you, Janine, and I'd like to add my thanks to the development planning team, because I've, all members who've got questions, I've always found them open, approachable, and very helpful in sort of dealing with any questions. So great team there, and well done, and a lot of work still to be done. But any members, don't wait for a council meeting for questions. Go behind the scenes and ask through the member referral system, dare I say, not just picking up phones. Okay, right. Well, that's been moved and seconded. So we're all in favour of that. I take it. There's no. I noticed Councillor Malley-Williams giving apologies, now leaving the meeting. Yep. Okay. Right. Thank you, Janine, Gareth, for that, and the team. Let's move on now to item 8. Report to Interim Chief Officer on council tax base for 22-23. Jill, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm hoping that my documents will load in time for my second item on the agenda. They've just crashed. So, this, for the purposes of the recording, I'm Jill Lewis, Interim Chief Officer, Finance, Performance and Change, and the report you have in front of you today at Council is the annual report that you receive on the council tax base. The purpose is to provide Council with details of the council tax base and the estimated collection rate for 22-23 for approval. So the council tax base determines the amount of council tax which can be raised to fund the council's budget. And as you know, the budget strategy is an integral part of the council's corporate plan and the medium-term financial strategy. So the council tax base is the measure of the relative taxable capacity of the different areas within the county borough. And once each property is valued, they're given one of 9 valuations, as you can see, from A to I. This hasn't changed over the last few years. That's multiplied by a given factor to bring it to a band D equivalent. And that calculation is set out in the table shown at 3.2. At 4.1, you'll see the gross estimated council tax base for 22-23 is 5596770. And the estimated collection rate has been kept at 97.5%, which Council approved last year. And I think that's to reflect the current economic circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic and the higher number of citizens facing economic hardship. At 4.2, you'll see that the council tax base is provided to the Welsh Government to calculate the amount of RSG that we receive, and the collection rates are assumed by the Welsh Government to be 100%. So regardless of whether we set it at 97.5, 98.5, 98, then we're assumed to collect 100% for the purposes of RSG. So I just want to reinforce that point. Just to remind Council, there are separate calculations provided for each of the town and community councils, and that base is used to calculate those, and those are all set out in Appendix A. So it's a fairly straightforward report, one that you receive at council at this time every year. And I'll take you to the recommendations at 9.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Members, you have the report for you. Recommendation at 9.
Move.
9-1. Moved. 2nd.
Second, Chair. Second.
Thank you. All okay with that? Do any members have any questions? Are we all happy? Silence is golden. Yeah. Okay, that's been moved and seconded and approved. Thank you, Jill. Moving on to item 9 then. Over to you again, Jill, with the amendments to financial procedure rules.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and for the purposes of the recording, Jill Lewis, Interim Chief Officer, Finance, Performance and Change. The report that you have in front of you today at Council is the amendments to the financial procedure rules, called the FPRs, within the Council's constitution. And you'll see that the management of the Council's financial affairs are conducted in accordance with the financial procedure rules, and they're set out in Part 4 of the Constitution. The FPRs have not been revised since 2017. That doesn't mean we haven't made any changes. We've obviously reflected changes where they've been appropriate, but we've done a full review of the FPRs, and that's what you have in front of you today at Council. So the financial procedure rules have been reviewed by officers, including those from finance, procurement, legal and internal audit, and a number of changes have been made, and they're reflected in 4.1. So there's been clarification on a number of areas to reflect current practice and updated wording where appropriate. Updates in respect to the capital strategy and the capital programme approvals, updated reporting and approval for leases, and also additional information for new rules on VAT and the construction industry scheme. There are new requirements in respect of social security contributions, as amended. They're called IR35, and that's also been updated. And we've taken the opportunity to update the FPRs in respect of data protection requirements under GDPR. We've also referenced and signposted to the Council's senior fraud investigator, and also processes to be followed for asset disposal. So they're the main changes, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the FPRs. We presented a report to Cabinet yesterday to approve the revised financial procedure rules, and a copy of those is attached to this report at Appendix 1 for information. So the revised financial procedure rules now need to be incorporated into the Constitution. So that was all I wanted to refer to today, Mr. Mayor. So I take you to the recommendation at 9.1.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Members, you have the recommendation before you. Mover and seconder, please.
Move. Second, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Walters, Councillor Lynn Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jill, for this very comprehensive report and the update of the FPRs. I've only got one comment on a change that I do think still needs to be made, and that's under section 4.4. The chief financial officer is still referred to as a he, and in this day and age, I think it should be it shouldn't be he. So if that could be changed, that's the only amendment I suggest. Thank you.
Valid point there. Jill is frozen.
Yeah, we'll take those into account.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, I think you're all in favour of the recommendation with that amendment?
All in favour of the condition? Yeah, pass, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All in favour of that, all quiet. Great. Thank you, Jill, for that. That's item 9. Approved. We're on to item 10 next then, the information reports for noting. Have we have anything much to say, Kelly, on that one quickly? If you can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Kelly Watson, Chief Officer, Legal and Regulatory Services, HR and Corporate Policy. As you said, Mr. Mayor, this is just a very brief report, and it's to inform Council of the information reports which have been published since your last scheduled meeting, and to ask you to note the publication of those reports, the details of which can be found in paragraph 4.1 of your report, and I therefore just ask you to note their publication. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, first to note this report, can we move on a second?
Mr. Mayor. Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you both. All in favour?
Aye.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly. That's item 10. Approve. Noted. So now on to item 11, where we have questions from members. First question from Councillor Tim Thomas, the Deputy Leader. Councillor Thomas, I take it you've received the answer. Do you know a supplementary question to put?
Yeah, I'll be very brief, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the response, very comprehensive, and I also want to pay tribute to officers in benefits and council tax who's answered a number of other supplementary questions. I've been looking at the data, and undeniably there's the likelihood of DHP is going to become even more popular with the with welfare reform, including the end of the universal credit uplift and the end of furlough. I'm just wondering if, in light of this and the perceived extra demand, has the Deputy Leader devised a communication strategy to ensure that the need can be met and that as many renters in both the public and private rented sector can be informed about this much needed resource in the future? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Leader, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Thomas, for that question. And indeed, any opportunity to promote the services of the authority is most welcome. We continue to try and promote this. We do have engagement with the Citizens Advice Bureau. They offer advice to residents who have financial difficulties, but I'm sure there's more that we can be doing, and I will ensure that a suitable press release is drafted to support that your request.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. We have an opportunity for 2 supplementary questions now, if anybody would like to ask any. Don't have to. If there aren't any supplementary questions, we move on to the next question. Okay, nobody's indicated for any supplementary questions, so thank you, Councillor Thomas and Deputy Leader, for that. We now move on to the next question, which Councillor Ross Pennant-Thomas, the Cabinet Member for Wellbeing and Future Generations. Councillor Thomas, you've received a response, I take it. Did you have a supplementary question to the Cabinet Member?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It was quite timely, actually, to hear the Cabinet Member speak earlier, referencing the difficulties in the Housing Options Service. So I pay tribute to those officers as they work their way through those problems. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I do have a supplementary, which I think takes account of the context we're working with in Wales, some of the oldest and most inadequate housing stock in Europe. Shelter Cymru, for example, are aware of some cases at the moment where tenants' rent has doubled overnight from £700 to £1,400 per month. Inflation is going through the roof and wages are not matching those. So, Mr. Mayor, I wonder what more then can we be doing as a local authority to better make use of the private rented sector that serves both tenant and landlord and eases the housing crisis. So some local authorities will have private rented and letting, social letting schemes, assuring tenants of a good quality home with a long-term tenancy, while landlords have security of income and peace of mind. So what more can we be doing to better make use of the private rented sector in Bridgend? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Pennant-Thomas, for your question. I'm not sure if you caught my announcement a couple of months ago where we were working with Cartrefi Havard to promote a rental scheme via the private landlords. I live in a community where private rental landlords are the most rent. They're the ones that rent all the houses in Ogmore, basically. And so I think based on that, we do use private landlords where they are available. We're not against using them, and I think often they do provide that much needed housing in especially those areas like mine, where there isn't an alternative available for social housing. In terms of affordable houses, I've just had a letter through from Welsh Government actually this afternoon saying that they're launching a scheme to help bridge the viability gap between the house. Sorry?
Oh, you and I haven't got the panny through. I took it down the bloody shed, didn't I?
Councillor Pam Davies, can you please take your microphone off?
Yes, so they're launching a scheme because I think they've committed to 20,000 houses or new affordable houses during the Senedd term. And so they've got a new scheme where we can apply for up to 50% of funding towards bridging that viability gap. So there is a lot in this, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you about all of it if you want.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Patel, much appreciated, and be happy to take this conversation online because some potentially ambitious pledges being made, and we just need to make sure that we've got that ambition. It's meeting that delivery, really, isn't it? Thanks very much, Councillor Patel.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. Oh, we will now look to ask supplementary questions. We have two opportunities for supplementary questions. Councillor Paul Davies and Councillor Jane Gebbie have indicated. Councillor Paul Davies.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Could the Cabinet Member tell us how many new affordable homes have been built over the last term of the administration? And with the additional social housing grant from the Welsh Government, how much more funding is due to come to Bridgend County Borough Council, please?
Okay, so in terms of the funding element, Welsh Government have increased their allocated amount. So it was 3 million and now it's gone to 10 million from 2019. So I think that's an amazing increase. I don't know if we we can always ask for more money. I'm not sure what the position would be. But yeah, so I think 10 million is quite a lot of money to go from 3 million to 10 million. So that's really good news, and I'm really grateful to Welsh Government for doing that. And in terms of the pipeline, I guess it's hard to tell. So there's I think 432 houses currently planned over the next 3-year period, but it goes with it's hard to say that that's what's going to happen because it depends on the market and whether or not RSLs can build the 432, but that is what they've got going forward over the next 3 years. That's the amount of houses that they've projected or they've got in the pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
That's your answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Jane Gebbie then, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Let me just remove my hand before I forget. Thank you very much. Bearing in mind the controversy that surrounds Westminster currently in relation to lobbying, Mr. Mayor, I would question the prejudicial interests of fellow members who have been asking questions today of Council, considering the organisations that they're employed for by themselves. And I would ask that the monitoring officer please comment on this situation. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Would Kelly, the monitoring officer, would like to comment at all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gebbie, if we can have contact outside the meeting, because obviously this supplementary doesn't seem directly linked to the question that's been asked and the questions before Council at the moment. So I'm happy to pick this up outside the meeting.
Okay, yes, thanks. I guess not so much a supplementary question, but a question about procedure and appropriate declarations of interest, if appropriate. So that's the two supplementary questions taken from us today. And we've concluded that part of the agenda, item 11. Item 12 is urgent items, and I've not been notified of any urgent items, so nothing further to consider on that. And that then brings us to the close of today's council meeting. And I'd like to thank you all for taking part today. Thankfully,